Okay, I always have to psych myself up a wee bit before I start talking.
Do you start doing those kind of vocal training?
Me.
You'll share man's greatest thrill.
They tried and failed.
They tried and died.
You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the Scratchcast, the alternative pop culture podcast. I'm Sneds, and as always, I'm joined by the Silver Fox, Mr. Grant Patterson.
Hello there.
And we're just two Scottish loons who love to talk about music. How have you been since the last podcast, Grant?
I've been good. Missing the barber's been open, so I've treated myself to another COVID haircut. Expertly done by myself this time. I've invested in my very own razor, so it was actually easier than what I thought it'd be, to be honest. I don't know if I'll keep it.
Do you not try various different hairstyles whilst you were doing it?
I didn't. I did think that I'd really fucked it up though, like when I first started, because it's a number 2, so is it 6mm? And I started off with like the front of my head, and it just didn't look right. Like I thought, like it was a lot shorter than what it was gonna be. But I just grinned and bared it, and got on with it. Like.
There's some horrendous like mid haircut photos of me from a few weeks ago when I got my hair cut short, and like it's Kat that was doing it, and we've got like we started off with like the scissors, and she just kind of cut into the back, and there was just like a horrendous like step, like and when I saw that I was just like, fuck it, just shave the whole lot off because it's just gonna look ridiculous. But there's some really awful like mid haircut photos, like embarrassingly bad.
That was my thinking as well. So like somebody at my work tried to do like my haircut. So I normally have like a short back and sides. Like I've got like a number 1 round the back and sides, and then a bit of hair on top, and normally have the kind of wee quiff. And she done a pretty good job, to be honest. But she shaved my head like right up to the ear, so there was just this like, I don't know, square patch of hair, and I was just like, just fuck it, just shave the whole thing off. So yeah, didn't get any photos though, thankfully.
There's no evidence of it.
There's no evidence.
Cool. Do you want to talk a wee bit about the interviews we've done? Well, the Waco interview, I suppose.
Yeah. So we recorded that on the 17th of February with Jack Hutchcraft and Welshie, so the lead singer and drummer of the cosmic punk band Waco that we've kind of featured quite heavily in, well, I suppose the podcast and the website itself. It was really fun. It was a good laugh. Speaking to people who've listened to the interview, said that it just felt like a bunch of guys just getting together and having a laugh, and that's exactly how it felt. It was really good fun. They're top guys, and I really enjoyed speaking to them.
Yeah, well, it was good fun. You can listen to the audio version, but if you watch the video version, there's more in the video version. You can watch as Welshie sneaks away to the toilet, and you can actually see him when he comes back. He's like opening the fridge, like, while we're still talking.
He gets himself another pint, doesn't he?
Aye, absolutely. And you get to see his Pride and Joy Kiss poster as well.
Yeah, forgotten about that.
So yeah, it was good fun. So definitely, even if you don't know who Waco are, just check it out. I think it's quite a fun conversation. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to give a quick mention to a live stream that I watched, and this is way back at the end of January. It just never really got a chance to talk about it. And it was a venue in Guildford called the Boiler Room. And Guildford's like southwest of London. It's not really a venue I know or I've really heard of before, but they were basically doing a series of like conversations with musicians. So the one that I watched was with Jamie Lenman, of course. Of course it was, and producer Space, who is a producer on Jamie's last 3 albums. So on Devolver, Shuffle, and King of Clubs. So it was just cool, just a cool like the sort of two guys sitting down, and the woman who sort of runs the boiler room was kind of on the decks and would occasionally play like clips of the songs, and then they would talk about the recording process and some of the inspiration behind the album and the albums and that kind of thing. So it was pretty cool. I didn't know this at the time, but I found out later that Space is actually a member of Never Not Nothing, who are
All right,
formerly
okay.
known as Black Features.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's quite interesting. Just and he didn't mention that at all in the interview, but I just happened to find that out later. So that was quite cool. So it's just a really kind of interesting conversation. At the time when I listened to it, it was a paid event, but now you can get it free on their YouTube page. So you can watch that for free. There's a bunch of other ones. I think Space talks to Joe Talbot of Idols as well.
Cool.
I haven't watched that one, but Joe Talbot's quite an interesting guy, so it'd be definitely worth a watch. And Boiler Room have been talking about a whole bunch of stuff they were doing for International Women's Day as well. So I think there's a whole load of stuff there for that as well. So definitely worth checking out. I just thought it would be worth mentioning those guys. And on that interview was opened up by there's a band called the Choco Laz. I think they're like a sort of indie acoustic 3-piece. So they opened the conversation with like a Reuben cover, and then they closed with one of their own songs. So they were pretty good. They've got an EP out. I can't remember what it's called, but worth checking out. It's just some cool stuff that a venue's doing while they can't put on live music.
Sorry, Sned, is that available on any other streaming services other than YouTube? Like, would it be available on Spotify at all?
The Chocolaz?
No, the one that Jamie Lineman's done.
Oh yeah, so it's a video.
All right, okay.
So it's not a podcast. It was like a live stream event, but the recording of it's on YouTube. So in fact, there's a Black Futures For Not Nothing live set as well that I think it was free actually, but I missed it. But that's on YouTube as well. So, and that's a band that are pretty awesome live. Definitely worth looking into that. Will we just get on with the rest of the show?
Right, man.
Cool. So, on our single swap this month, we're discussing the latest single from Irish hip hop trio KNEECAP and the most mysterious song on the internet, the most mysterious song on the internet. In Submission Corner, we've got releases from Yorkshire instrumental outfit Going Feral and Livingston rapper Slippery Trashmouth. And for our album reviews, we've got releases from Los Angeles, California's indie rock trio Cheekface, English singer-songwriter Arlo Parks, Canadian rock duo Black Pistol Fire, and psychedelic multimedia artist the John Michie Collective. Right, that's quite a lot to get through. So let's just head straight into the single swap then. So like on every other episode, we give each other a song to listen to. So I gave Grant the most mysterious song on the internet, and Grant gave me Man by KNEECAP featuring DYRT. Where do you want to start?
I'm quite happy to start. As I said before we started recording there, Snids, I've written quite a lot on this song, so buckle in. So Sned's quite rightly said, a song is commonly referred to as the most mysterious song on the internet. However, it's otherwise known as Like the Wind, Blind the Wind, Check It In, Check It Out, and or Take It In, Take It Out after lines in fan-interpreted lyrics. It is a song that is widely believed to have been recorded from a German radio station, which I can't pronounce, so I'm not going to bother.
Music for junge Leute.
Is that the name of the radio station, or is that the name of the program on the radio?
Sorry, that's the name of the program. My bad. I don't know what the station's just called NDR. I don't know how you.
Do you want me to try and pronounce it? I think it's pronounced Norddeutscher Rundfunk. That wasn't too bad.
So if there are any German native German speakers listening, like we apologize for.
I've just murdered your language.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it was believed to have been recorded from this German radio station somewhere in between 1982 and 1984. So according to an article which is available on Rolling Stone website from September 2019, a person by the name of Darius S. recorded the song from the radio station onto a cassette deck, along with songs from the likes of XTC and The Cure. Darius S. stated that he didn't record an intro from a DJ or anything else that might have otherwise identified the song. Certainly, the recording I listened to on YouTube does sound as if there may have been a follow-up kind of outro or description of the song by a DJ. You hear a very brief kind of popping, almost kind of lip-smacking sounds as if someone is away to start speaking. However, it might very well just be the sound of the cassette deck being turned off. I've obviously got no way of kind of knowing that. At any rate, it wasn't until 2007 that the search for this unknown band or artist really took off. Apparently, after years of searching for the song online, Darius's sister, Lydia H., under the username of Blue, posted a small digitalized snippet of the song onto a German website dedicated to 80s synth pop known as spiritofradio.ca. The song, and indeed the search for more facts about the song, has grown exponentially since this time. Internet sleuths have even gone to the length of contacting NDR DJs who were working for the radio station at the time, such as British-born Paul Baskerville, whom disappointingly has no recollection of the song either. He's conceded that it could potentially be amongst his collection of over 10,000 vinyls from this time, and has since stated that most collectors know most of what they own, so he thinks it's probably unlikely that it's somewhere in there. There has been quite a few false leads, dead ends, and myths that have been posted online in connection to the song, which obviously just kind of adds more to its mystique, including the story that it was the last song that the mysterious band played before all members were shot dead whilst attempting to climb over the Berlin Wall, which sad but kind of cool as well.
I didn't hear that one.
The song, nevertheless, continues to capture people's imagination. One internet poster has suggested that part of its appeal is precisely because people can't locate it in 4 seconds. You can't use Shazam or anything like that, as with kind of other songs nowadays. The song is also featured heavily in a YouTube channel called Tales from the Internet, whereby YouTuber Wang has posted a total of 4 videos to date on the subject, which is where I got most of my information on this piece, as well as a few other articles like the Rolling Stones magazine that I mentioned. His most recent being, or Wang's most recent video being from the 10th of January this year, whereby he touches on the hottest lead to date, with some people going as far as suggesting that the mystery has now been solved, although he himself doesn't seem entirely convinced. Several individuals have suggested over the years that it may have been a Greek band called Metro Decay, whereas others have noted similarities between the song and those of another Greek band called Statues in Motion, both of which had previously been ruled out. However, as is the case with this internet phenomenon, more and more people are joining the case and rediscovering or retreading old lines of inquiry. This has coincidentally led several individuals to contact members of Statues in Motion in order to ask if they could shed any more light on the song. One of the founding members of the band, who goes by the pseudonym Billy Knight, initially stated that he knew nothing about the song. However, when another user by the name of Cam Conspiracy, I believe, contacted him, he stated the song was in fact a song that the band had originally recorded for their self-titled eponymous debut album that never made the final cut. So that's quite interesting in and of itself. And although there are definite similarities between the song and those of Statues in Motion, there seems to be some discrepancies in the types of equipment that have been used, the dates and the personnel. For example, internet sleuths have deduced that the song uses a Yamaha DX7, whereas Billy Knight claims to use a Yamaha CS15D. According to internet users, it's pretty much impossible to recreate the synth sounds heard on the song using the CS15D, and that the Yamaha DX7 didn't come out until after Statues in Motion's debut album had been released. Similarly, some have suggested that Billy Knight may be using this as an opportunity to promote the 30-year anniversary re-release of the Statues in Motion album, or perhaps even his new band Astrodot. The vocals definitely do, however, sound very similar, with some suggesting that perhaps Statues in Motion vocalist Aston Dean may have either recorded the song prior to joining the band with another outfit, as he had previously been linked to a band called Homicide. Unfortunately, his whereabouts remain unknown, and there's currently a major internet manhunt on the go to try and track him down.
It's a lot of information to take
That
in.
is a lot of information, man. Were you aware of any of that?
Most of it. I didn't know the sort of that story about the Berlin Wall. I hadn't heard any of the rumors like that, and it reminded me of we heard of Rodriguez?
Yeah, oh yeah. Did we not
So
go and see that? Or was the there's a movie, isn't there?
yeah, there's a documentary called Searching for Sugar Man.
Yeah.
Basically, Rodriguez was like this. He was an American artist. He never really took off, but then he had like a massive underground following in South Africa. And the documentary is about trying to find him. And the rumors about Rodriguez, like that were flying around South Africa, were that he like sang one of his songs, and then when the song finished, he blew his brains out on stage. So it just reminds me of that like sort of like crazy rumor that flies about when people have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah. It's a really good documentary as well, man.
It's brilliant, yeah.
Wasn't he working as a labourer or something like that?
Aye, something like that, yeah. Yeah.
But he since went on and played like massive venues, like huge stadiums and what have you, over in South Africa, hasn't he?
Once they found him, he played a huge stadium in South Africa, and he's played like the Royal Albert Hall and all sorts of stuff. So he's kind of he missed out on that portion of fame in his life, but it's come back around and worked out in the end, I suppose.
Definitely. So as for the song itself, we'll get there eventually. It's approximately 2 minutes and 55 seconds long, so just under 3 minutes. I've described it as being a pretty generic sounding post-punk, new wave kind of krautrock song, similar to the type of thing you might have expected Joy Division to have done. However, I think they've previously been ruled out as well. The vocalist on the track sounds very similar to Ian Curtis, in my opinion. However, you can definitely pick up on a kind of German or Eastern European accent there. The song's good, don't get me wrong. However, I do wonder if it's maybe a case of the song's mystique and background being more interesting than the song itself. It's a very guitar-driven number, which coincidentally is another reason that some internet sleuths have deduced that this probably isn't a Statues in Motion song, as most of their songs appear to be more synth or keyboard heavy. The synth in this track is, however, really good and really quite infectious. It kind of vamps over the top of a rhythm, lead, and bass guitar. The song includes real drums rather than a drum machine, unlike some of the other bands previously mentioned as well. The vocals are quite distant. They've got quite a kind of gloomy sound, which kind of makes it hard to decipher the lyrics again, further adding to the mystique and the mystery to the song. It kind of follows a pretty traditional verse, chorus, verse pattern. Yeah, it's worth a listen, I suppose. It's got a real kind of, I suppose, gothy kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
As well. What's your thoughts on it, man?
I mean, I think what you've said is pretty accurate. I quite like it. I mean, it sort of starts off like a quite a generic post-punk song, like you say, but I think it's got this sort of more joyous kind of classic rock guitar riff in it that kicks in after the first few bars. So I think that maybe elevates it a little bit in my estimation. And the vocals are like you said, a bit like Joy Division, or I've said like a less fun Depeche Mode. Like,
right, okay, yeah.
It's one of those songs. I think it's a little underwhelming at first, but it kind of gets under your skin a wee bit. Like, there's a nice like chug to the guitars and like nice rumble to the bass and trundle to the drums, and it just kind of, after a couple of listens, it kind of gets under your skin a wee bit. So I'd say, yeah, I think that's how I would describe it. Maybe a little bit underwhelming, but it's a slow burner, I would say, and it'll grow on you. But like you say, it is more the kind of fascination of the internet with finding out who it is, who the artist is, and what the song is called that is more interesting than the song, really.
Yeah, I find it quite strange that the guy who originally recorded it from this German radio station wants to only be known as Darius S. Like, he seems quite reluctant to give his full name. Same with his sister. Like, she just wants to be known as Lydia H. and had previously used the username Blue, and I think she'd used another one as well. I can't remember what it was now off the top of my head, but it sounded like a proper name. Like it could have been a man's name.
Aye, they maybe just don't want weirdos, like random weirdos contacting them. I think that's probably fair enough.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Because inevitably, like weird, obsessive people will start messaging them, and like I don't know, but weird stuff happens on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting about Statues in Motion because it does feel a little bit like after initially denying it was their song, it's almost like he's gone, oh, wait a minute, I could actually say this is our song and
benefit
gain a bit of traction off it because there's loads of people out there searching for this. So it does feel a little bit like they're jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah. And if you watch Wang's videos, I think he's taken screen grabs of conversations that the likes of Cam Conspiracies had with Billy Knight on YouTube, and possibly there's been a chain of emails that have gone back and forth between the two of them, and he does get quite defensive as well whenever Cam Conspiracy, if it is indeed Cam Conspiracy, one internet user anyway, whenever he gets challenged on certain things, he gets quite defensive and, you know, starts getting quite personal. Which would lead you to think that he's probably lying.
Yeah, so I don't think the mystery has not been solved, and probably, well, I was going to say it probably never will, but you never know. You never know. I don't know if it'll ever be solved conclusively.
No, probably not. No. But interesting nevertheless. As for a rating, I've given it possibly a 6 or 7 out of 10.
Yeah, a 7, I think, is what I've gone for, which is fine. I think, yeah, so it's worth, if you're interested in all the stuff that Grant's just told you, go and watch Wang's series of videos because there's a lot more information there, and he, like he says, he shows like screen grabs and all sorts of stuff. So there's a lot of information out there. There are a few. I mean, the whole song is on YouTube, but there's a few different versions of varying quality. The best version I could find was 2. So one is just one's a music video, which is like it's got like old footage from the 80s, like people in like 80s dance clubs and stuff. And it just works with the kind of whole 80s vibe of the song. So the video goes really well with it. And that's by Hold On Music. If you find that on YouTube. And there's a remastered version. There are a few different ones, but the one that actually sounds better is by Johnny on Sugar. So that seems to be the kind of best quality version I could find on YouTube. And then obviously the music video as well. Somebody's uploaded it to Spotify as well, so you can, if you search for the most mysterious song on the internet, you'll find it. You'll find it on Spotify. Just watch out. There's a few random cover versions. There's one by like a symphonic metal band, which is rubbish, and there's another cover by like what are they called? They're like an indie rock band, and it's basically a straight up cover, but it's just not as good. So beware of imitators. Cool. Okay, so that was the most mysterious song on the internet, and remains the most mysterious song on the internet. Okay, right. So we'll jump back to the song that you gave me, and that is the song "Mam" by KNEECAP featuring DYRT. That's spelled DYRT. So KNEECAP, as I said earlier, a Northern Irish hip hop trio based out of Belfast. They're made up of members. Again, I'm going to have to butcher another foreign language here. It's made up of members Mo Chara, Moglai Bap, and DJ Provi. Don't know if I'm saying that right, but those are their
I
sort
would
of
say with
Irish
absolute
names.
certainty you won't be pronouncing it right.
Absolutely. And those will be their sort of Irish names. And indeed, they sing or rap mostly in Irish as well. So the song is came out the tail end of last year, the 20th of December, and it's just over 4 minutes long and was released by the band independently in aid of Samaritans. So I'd kind of forgotten that you told me about these guys a while back. So when you mentioned it on the last podcast, and I think you said it was Boff that introduced you to them.
Aye.
So I do remember I had listened to a few tracks when you first told me about them, and there was one in particular that stuck out to me. And it was CERTA, and it's got this really good bit in it that just goes CERTA, and it's then he speaks a whole load in Irish, so I can't sing that part, but it's just really, really catchy. No idea what it means, but and that seems to be the running theme with their music because I've no idea what it means. I just have to go by what it sounds like, and generally the songs that I have heard are really good. I couldn't find out very much about DYRT at all. I found that he was a masked rapper from Limerick, and I found an a cappella performance of a song called PTSD on YouTube. It's like he's not masked for the whole time. He doesn't hide his face, so you do get to see his face. But it's almost just like a rambling story about life and death and mental health. And at times he just sounds like a slurring drunk, but kind of a well-read slurring drunk. So that's kind of quite interesting. But I think you said earlier you found his name. Like, I mean, I couldn't find anything else on him.
So I think if you're I listened to this song on Spotify originally, and I think if you click DYRT's name, it'll take you to a discography for him, and I don't think it's the same guy, to be honest. I think it's an American rapper by the same name, but from what I know about this guy, so I think he has at times been known as Dirty Harry. I think his real name's Shane Davis. He's an Irish rapper and spoken word artist from Limerick. You can find some of his stuff on YouTube, like that video that you were kind of telling me about. I think he's also worked with likes of Weens, who's another Irish rapper, and I think they've previously been involved with some of the work that the Rubber Bandits have done in the past. I think they're all pals.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find a Bandcamp page or a Facebook page or anything like that for him.
Cool. Well, you did better than I could because I just couldn't find anything at all on him other than that video really. So going back to the song itself, "Mam" is a tribute to the artist's mothers, and there's a really quite sad story behind it because basically before the song was finished, Moglai Bap, I still don't know if I'm saying his name right, his mother committed suicide. So it's a real shame that she never actually got a chance to hear what was kind of a tribute to their mother. So I think that's kind of why it's dedicated to charity and to Samaritans. So the song, so yeah, I really like the song. It's got quite a heavy 80s vibe in the instrumentation, like a sort of silky, soothing keys and like opposing electronic bass thuds that open it up. Remind me something like something off of like the Streets of Rage soundtrack, for like the Mega Drive.
Mm-hmm.
Something about it that reminds me of that. And it's both melancholy but uplifting at the same time. The keys are, I'm not sure what they are, whether they're like a xylophone or a glockenspiel or something like that. It's probably synthetic, but that's what it sounds like to me. And that kind of continues through the song with various sort of echoing drum loops and rolling electronics that sound to me like they're out of like a 90s educational TV program, but most of the vocals are in Irish, so for the most part, I don't know what's being said, but the flow and timbre, the rapping is generally pretty laid back and soothing, not too dissimilar to the likes of the Easy Life EP that we covered last year. There's a section around the 2 minute 45 mark where the vocal intensity ramps up for a few bars, which keeps things interesting. There are some sections in English, and they sort of discuss not having a father figure around and giving thanks to their mothers for taking on that role as well. There's a sort of acceptance of circumstances, and there's no kind of grudge being held here. But I think that's DYRT that's rapping that part.
I was going to say, I think it is.
But then there's like it's quite a few references to like doing lines, presumably of coke. So I'm not really sure what the significance of that is.
I doing lines with my brother or something, isn't it?
Yeah, like there's a bit about doing lines with my brother. I'll do another line with my brother, and then there's another part that's like sniffing up lines. So I don't really know.
Aye.
Well, one of the line
isn't the line "I'm missing my mother, but I'm just going to do another line with my brother" or something to that effect, isn't
the
it?
thing I've written down here is so thank fuck moms don't do a runner because some dads spend years buying butter. I just took another line with my brother, so I want to tell my mom that I love her. So I don't know what the whole thing about doing lines is, but you know, I think that's a really solid track. So I've given it an 8.
Yeah, well, I've said it's a really strong 8, possibly a 9
Yeah.
for me. I really enjoyed it, particularly liked DYRT's vocal section from around the kind of 1 minute 43 mark. And you're right, it does deal with some pretty heavyweight issues. I could probably, try and interpret them the best I can, but I'd probably butcher it, so I'm not going to bother. But it's good, yeah, and I would kind of agree. I quite like that. I've described it as being a really infectious kind of 80s sounding kind of call and answer section, or section between that kind of light keyboard or synth riff with a more fat and bass heavy one, which, as you said, or quite rightly said, is just kind of repeated throughout the course of the song. Yeah, it's a solid track. They've got a lot of really good singles out there. HOOD is fantastic as well. I think you said you'd previously listened to Your Sniffer Dogs Are Shite. Is that one of them that you listened to?
I can't remember exactly which ones I listened to. I listened to 3 or 4, and Hood was one of them.
Yeah.
And CERTA was one of them. And yeah,
And
Your
that's the
Sniffer Dogs
first
Are
single.
Shite probably was one of them, yeah. Yeah, so I haven't listened to their album though, so I'll need to definitely check that out, I think, on the strength of those few singles. So that was Mam by KNEECAP featuring DYRT.
These crew that I single mash, you'd knock the comp out of any dash, you'd break your jaw down, me with gosh. And then there goes.
Hang fuck, man, don't do a runner. Cause some dads spend years buying butter.
Shock on them a whammy, gan hooven tanny, gan hooven a banny, was gone her mommy.
My father's child, my mother's son. That line could be troublesome. That sure what's done is done, and my mother is the stubborn cunt for a son.
Right, let's go on to. Oh, sorry, we need to give each other our singles. So skipping ahead there.
Too keen.
What have you got for me?
So I have The Pale Horse by Elliot Pullen, or Pullen. I don't know how you pronounce his name. It's spelled Pullen. It's not a particularly new single. I heard it fairly recently. That's definitely not a new single because it came out almost a year ago.
Right.
It came out in the 16th of March, 2020. I discovered it off the back of a YouTube binge. I discovered a video of his called the most stereotypical punk song ever, or the most stereotypical punk rock song ever. And it is. It does exactly what it says in the tin. It's a banging tune. So I decided to listen to some more of his stuff. He doesn't have all that much out there. I think there's maybe a 5-track EP that was released earlier on last year as well. But yeah, I liked him. It's quite similar, I suppose, to the stuff that Joe Billy does, that kind of acoustic punk, or something like that song is. Pale Horse has an early kind of Dylan vibe to it. It kind of reminded me of the Dylan song Masters of War.
Oh yeah,
that's the name of the song. So yeah, I decided to give it to you, see what you think.
nice.
I quite enjoyed it.
So what's he called again?
Elliot Pullen.
Cool. So The Pale Horse by Elliot Pullen. So I am giving you something completely different, and the song is called Average Death by The Armed.
Okay.
Now, The Armed are an anonymous hardcore punk collective from Detroit, Michigan. They've been on the go since 2009. So I think this will be a pretty divisive one, because the band are known for very dense, wildly inventive hardcore songs that can be very off-putting for the uninitiated. So,
Right.
I haven't listened to this in depth, and I haven't listened to The Armed really in depth either. So they've got an album. They've got a new album coming out. I think their 4th album that comes out on April the 16th. But I figured, rather than kind of diving in straight at the deep end with them, we should maybe perhaps just dip our toes in the water first to see if anything bites. Because from what I have listened to of The Armed, it's a difficult listen. But I think if the people that do like The Armed are like rabid in their like fandom, like, you know, they're the best thing ever. But if you don't get it, like, you really don't get it. So I think it would be interesting to talk about.
So you said it was an anonymous punk rock collective.
Hardcore punk.
Hardcore
yeah.
collective, sorry.
So the more extreme end of punk music.
Interesting.
I think they sort of mix elements of, like, I was going to say pop, but as close to pop as shouty hardcore probably gets. But they're not just straight up hardcore punk. Like, there's a lot going on. So I think
is it kind of similar to Dreg in a way?
I mean, Dreg are a bit more new metal-y.
Yeah.
But think the sort of heavier riffs of Dreg, but then put lots of extra noise in there and just layers of stuff. I suppose aspects of Code Orange, like,
Right, okay.
the way
Industrial?
Code Orange have got lots of layers of things going on. I don't know if it's perhaps as melodic as Code Orange, at least from what I've listened to so far. But we can once you've had a listen to that, we can talk about it a bit more. But so that's Average Death by The Armed.
Cool, man.
Right, let's move on to Submission Corner then. So, as always, on Submission Corner, we discuss some of the stuff that's arrived in our inbox. So, if you're listening and have something you'd like to hear, that you'd like us to hear, then you can send it over to us at headscratcher@outlook.com, or just fire over on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever. So this time round, we have releases from Yorkshire instrumental outfit Going Feral and Livingston rapper Slippery Trashmouth. What do you want to start with?
You want me to start with Slippery Trashmouth?
Let's go for it.
Go for it. So, as Ned said there, Postulated Substance Abuse by Slippery Trashmouth was released on the 28th of February, earlier on this year, on Speak Sleazy Records. It's a 5-song EP. It's approximately 13 minutes and 41 seconds long. Slippery Trash Mouth, otherwise known as Oozing Goon, Kid Scummy, Little Dumb Shit, and Young Snot Bubble, is a Scottish rapper and entrepreneur from Livingston. He owns his own independent clothing brand called Goon Mob, which he's been growing for a number of years now. This is his first EP to date. His first EP, Cats Motel, was released on the 3rd of March last year, and his second EP, What the Fuck, was released on the 3rd of July last year. So, as it turns out, I've actually seen him rap before.
Right?
Yeah, well, not seen him. I've watched a video of his.
All right. Okay.
I watched a video of him rap before, under the pseudonym Oozing Goon, on a YouTube video from a channel called Scotty Media, which is a Scottish media channel aimed at promoting rap, hip hop, and grime singers and songwriters in a series that they did called Rep Your City Cypher. And it featured Spawn Zero and Bars Fury, both of which feature on this EP.
Okay.
On a couple of tracks. So yeah, it was quite a revelation. I think it was actually Tom, of all people, that sent me over the video to watch. Obviously quite a while ago now. I couldn't tell you when that video was released. At least a couple of years ago, I think. So anyway, in the press release that we received from this album, it announced that Slippery Trash Mouth is serving up another batch of lo-fi, I can never fucking pronounce this word, existentialism, with his new EP. Coincidentally, the opening track, Commercial Break, opens with Slippery Trash Mouth saying that he's meditating soon, you know what I mean? Channel your chakras and shit. Think about Alan Watt and what he said in this situation. Probably stop smoking so much weed, you dumbass. Over this kind of Eastern sounding melody, possibly a sitar, I really don't know. It's quite fitting as the person he's speaking about. Alan Watt was a British philosopher responsible for popularising Buddhism, Taoism, and Hinduism in Western culture, and there's small snippets of his interviews with him rather, scattered throughout the course of the EP. There's also a reference in there to William Golding's Lord of the Flies later on in the EP. I mean, I'll be the first to admit that this sort of thing isn't typically in my wheelhouse. However, like KNEECAP, I actually quite enjoyed it and found it quite refreshing hearing somebody with a Scottish accent, somebody who speaks like us, kind of do this type of thing. I particularly liked hearing words like hing, coothie, and hunna being used. That was really cool. And I really quite enjoyed the kind of beats and the kind of musical compositions on the track as well. Particularly on the third track, Quality Control Center, which for my money was kind of similar to the type of thing that you might have heard on the Rap Forever album that we covered previously. It has that same dreamy sounding kind of xylophone sound. What about yourself, man? What was your kind of initial thoughts on the?
Yeah, well, I'd been so for a number of like the playlists over the last few months, the alternative music playlists, I've put a few of Slippery Trash Mouth's tracks in there. So I've listened to some of his stuff before this EP came out. Not as maybe far back as that video you were talking about, but within the last year, I've listened to a few of his tracks. I think Spalding was the first one that I heard, right, which is really good. And he had a Christmas single out, which is called Seasonal Defective, and it's just a really kind of depressing Christmas song, which is the sort of Christmas song that I like. If you go and listen to the kind of the Christmas playlist that I update every year, you'll get the idea of the sort of Christmas song that I like, and it's morose, sad and depressing, like or evil kind of sounding stuff. So Seasonal Defective fits right into that. But like you said, I like how unashamedly Scottish his rapping is, and like, you know, he's not doing things, he's doing hings, and there's just a nice relatability. It's refreshing to hear that kind of thing. There's just a sense of fun and humour alongside a kind of don't give a fuck attitude that he's got. Commercial Break's a really good opener. That, like you said, there's that sort of Eastern meditative. Try and say that word 3 times fast. Eastern meditative. try and not say it like a robot. An Eastern beat. So
Yeah,
there's that, which is quite cool. And then I like the next track, Retail Therapist. I think it's Spawn Zero that guests on that. And I just like the opening line that goes, I feel like Jesse Pinkman, I'm chained to this lab. The only difference is the chain of command. And I don't know, I'm a sucker for a Breaking Bad reference. So
I really like his vocals, though. I really like Spawn Zero's vocals on the tracks as well.
Yeah. And then, like, Quality Control Center, like you said, I completely agree with you about Rap Forever. There's that same kind of tinkling percussion, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I think my personal favourite track is probably Happy Little Mountains. It's got this kind of like feverish but melodramatic piano loop. And then you've got the guest Bars Fury, which is like a great rapper named Bars Fury. And he kind of, spits bars on the first half of the track. And I think of all the songs, it's the one where the beats and the raps kind of intertwine the most naturally. And it also opens with a Bob Ross sample. And there's a few more interspersed throughout the song. So that's quite unusual to hear Bob Ross talking about which brush he's selecting to begin painting. So yeah, that's my favourite track. So you've got to mention Hypno Kid, who I think provides all the beats. There's a real sort of classic hip hop feel to the beats. Like, reminds me of I feel like a name drop Jurassic 5 a lot when I'm talking about hip hop, but that's because that's my kind of favorite era of hip hop, and it's just kind of sample driven, and it sort of brings in that old school sound without sounding dated. So yeah, I quite enjoyed this.
What did you rate it, Snids?
So I've given it a 7.
Yeah, I've given it a 6 or 7.
The standout track, Happy Little Mountains, that's really, really top-notch track. I think it's brilliant. I'm just excited to hear what this guy comes out with next, because he's quite prolific, and he drops a single like every month or every few weeks, it seems. So there's a lot of creativity there. I mean, obviously he's got a clothing brand, and he started up this record label as well. So I think it would be interesting. There's obviously a culture of young Scottish rappers here. So it'll be exciting to see kind of what these guys either together or individually come out with in the future. So yeah, enjoyed this, and it's kind of exciting for what's to come.
Definitely, man. Cool.
So that was Postulated Substance Abuse by Slippery Trash Mouth. It's just fun to say, isn't it?
But I love how it's spelled as well, because it's spelled how we would say it.
I went F. Yeah.
Aye.
Yeah, totally.
I'm meditating shit, you know what I mean? Channel your chakras and shit.
What they both talk about is politics.
I feel like Jesse Pinkman, I'm chained to this lab. The only difference is the chain of command.
I'm singing songs to the moon, slow dancing. I love my bitch, but I don't do romancing. I'm taking everything that ain't nailed and leaving ransom.
I was left on the road. Get a penny for your souls, let machetes go, I don't follow any code.
I'm in your place playing Space Invaders, laying waste to refrigerators, eating pounds of the cake and layers.
Right, what we doing?
Too late already. It's too late by Going Feral.
Cool. Okay, I'll just fire into this. So yeah, Going Feral are an instrumental post-rock and metal band from Yorkshire, Leeds and Huddersfield specifically, and are made up of members Robert Burns, Yuri Kozorizov on guitars, and Alex Diffley on drums. So in their press release, the band name check the likes of kind of Mogwai and Caspian, alongside the likes of La Dispute and Mastodon. So, which I think kind of covers the extent of their sound, because it's a mixture of like post rock, post hardcore, and like progressive metal. So it probably covers their various sounds. So Too Late, Already It's Too Late is their second single, released at the end of January this year. And it follows their debut single, Ghoul Rebellion, which came out in May 2020. So whilst Ghoul Rebellion brings the riffs and clobbering heaviness straight from the off, Too Late, It's Already Too Late is a far more contemplative affair, beginning with sort of muted guitar picking, and that slowly builds before the drums kick in at the 45-second mark with a really satisfying bassy thud and up-tempo cymbals that juxtapose the slower pace in the guitars. I mean, this track is nearly 10 minutes long, so it is very long, but it does a decent job of steadily building up in both intensity and density with kind of layers of sort of crooning ethereal guitars and changing drum patterns as it goes along. There is a relatively abrupt change at the sort of 4.5 minute mark where all the instruments kind of fall away and
it's just the drums, isn't it?
Yeah, the drums, it just leaves the drums, and they sort of form a transition into a sort of new segment, which brings in more guitar riffs. There's one that sort of chugs away while the other kind of scatters itself over the top, which is quite cool. Like I said, the transition is quite abrupt, but I quite like the drums in that transition, so I'm not too bothered. You get the return of those kind of crooning guitars and the sort of solo over the riffs before giving way to there's a wee bit of a cool off period, about 6.5 minutes. And the intensity of the drums comes back there. And that's the thing that kind of hooked me in, was the drums there, and they sort of smash and shudder, and you can hear the guitars like kind of rasping and growling in the background. And that kind of builds and builds, and towards the end just becomes this really intense kind of cacophony of sound. And I think the last few minutes of this are really good. And it reminds me of something like, I don't know if you're familiar with the band Deaf Heaven, but they do sort of clean post-rocky kind of instrumental music, but with black metal vocals over the top. So I kind of find myself, while I was listening to it, kind of imagining the black metal vocals coming in. It's not, I'm not suggesting that there should have been vocals there. It was just kind of the mood and vibe that kind of passage created for me. It just reminded me of that band, and I could almost hear the vocals, which is a bit weird, but yeah, I quite like this. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it as well. You know, as you said, it is a long song, just under 10 minutes long, and I suppose, you know, we've previously covered Icatan, which is, you know, twice as long.
Yeah.
So it does kind of seem as if it's going to be, you know, a bit of an undertaking, but I think there's enough changes in there. There's enough kind of textures and layers to keep you interested. And I found it to be quite an atmospheric piece. Really enjoyed the guitars in this. The kind of noodling, you know, little guitar arpeggios layered in there. I thought that was really quite cool. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it, man.
I think you mentioned Icatan. Obviously, they're both sort of instrumental post rock and metal bands, but I think and there are similarities in that they've both got some sort of shoegazy elements to their sound, but Icatan take a more kind of classic rock and heavy metal kind of approach, whereas Going Feral are more like sort of post-hardcore kind of that sort of direction. like, I'm not saying one's better than the other. It's
No.
just for comparison. That's how they sort of differ in their approach to this kind of instrumental rock and metal kind of thing. What would you rate this?
I've given it a 6 or 7.
I've given it an 8, and it's just I just really like. I think it's just got a really good payoff. I think you put a lot of time into it, and then the end is so good for me that I'm just like, I think you kind of get rewarded for listening to it, if that's if that's your thing. If it's not your thing, then you'll be like, well, fuck off. Just wasted 10 minutes. But yeah, I really like it.
Cool.
So it was it's Too Late, It's Already Too Late by Going Feral. The reason Okay. Let's go into the album reviews then.
Yeah, boy. Which I think we're just going to do it in chronological order.
Yep.
Which would mean starting with
Cheekface.
Cheekface.
I think that's right. Isn't it?
Emphatically No, Cheekface. Do you want me to start?
If you want to, go for it.
So, we've got Emphatically No by Cheekface. I always kind of have a wee chuckle whenever I hear that name, because all I can think of is is it Mitchell and Weblick? That sketch from Mitchell and Weblick with a kid with an arse for a face.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
That's all I can think of whenever I hear their name.
My favourite sketch from that Mitchell and Webb look is the one with the guy with the flute, and he gives him the magic flute and he makes him shit himself.
Yeah, I like the one where it's the two Nazis.
We're the bad guys.
They're like, we've got skull and crossbones on our outfits. I think we might be the bad guys. Yeah, I thought that was a good. It's quite a good series, actually. Come to think of it.
Yeah, it is.
I'm actually reading Robert Webb's book at the moment, How Not to Be a Boy. It's a good book. It's a good book. Anyway, Emphatically No by Cheekface, who, as far as I'm aware, do not have Arses For Faces, was released on the 11th of January 2001 on New Professor Music, the self-professed world's greatest record company. It's 13 songs long, or contains 13 songs, and it's approximately 34 minutes and 41 seconds long, so just under 35 minutes. Emphatically No is Cheekface's sophomore album, or third if you include their live album, Cheekface on Audio Tree, which was released on the 4th of the 3rd, 2020. Their debut album, Therapy Island, was released on the 20th of March 2019. Cheekface are a Los Angeles three-piece which consists of singer and lead guitarist Greg Katz, Amanda Tanner on bass, and Mark Echo Edwards on drums. They've been described variously online as alternative indie punk, and or pop punk. And as with a lot of these labels and categories, it doesn't really give you an accurate picture of what to expect. I would describe them having a really lo-fi, low energy yet anxious, almost febrile feel to them. A lot of that low energy is solely down to the lead singer Greg Katz's vocal delivery. Kind of talk sings for the most part, and for my money, it's quite similar to bands like Cake, the Moldy Peaches, or at least some of the stuff that the Moldy Peaches have done, Talking Heads. And there were also occasions where I was reminded of Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys on the likes of I Don't Want to Go to Calabasas, albeit a more refrained and less jittery and maniacal Jello Biafra. It could very well just be a purely accent thing. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, as for the kind of musical composition, I would say it is indie, but quite up tempo and upbeat, and it makes for quite an interesting juxtaposition with Greg Katz's vocal delivery and lyrics, which for the most part are quite pessimistic, sardonic, and cynical, and often pretty funny at times. I've read an interview online on overblown.co.uk by a guy called Stephen Aitken, who said that this album feels like it pretty much encapsulates the feelings of the mass swathes of disaffected millennials out there. And I suppose, you know, the opening track, Listen to Your Heart No, for example, kind of sees Katz list loads of life-affirming and positive sayings and sentiments such as listen to your heart, keep on keeping on, and so on, in this kind of call and answer type chorus, with the rest of the band responding with a sulky and indignant no, which I found quite funny. What was your initial thoughts, man?
I really like this album quite a lot, to be honest. And I think I've sort of described it as like laid back, quirky alternative rock. Because I mean it is sort of indie, but there's a lot of like there's a bit more grunt to some of the songs than maybe a sort of indie sound, I guess. But anyway, it's got, I think, the like you said, the laid back kind of sound to it is more to do with Greg Katz's delivery, where he just, it's almost like deadpan his delivery.
Really,
it's like a sort of got a no kind of sort of no fucks to give kind of attitude, and he is just pretty much talking his way through most of this. But at the same time, some of the instrumentals are actually really high energy. So there's an interesting kind of juxtaposition going on there with the songs. I've kind of likened his vocals to, if you think of the song The Ballad of Chasey Lane by the Bloodhound Gang, there's like a similar kind of delivery.
Right, yeah,
vocals.
yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And there's humor as well, but I mean, the Bloodhound Gang are far more obvious and provocative in the way that they use humor, but this is a lot more subtle. But there's just a wee bit of a similarity in vocalists there. I've sort of said a less gravelly E from the Eels as well at times.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I didn't think of that first.
Yeah.
You mention it. Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the sort of social commentary and the humor and some of the just kind of general weirdness that happens in these songs as well. You've already mentioned Listen to Your Heart No, really good track, really good opener. And that chorus just gives me a chuckle every time. Best Life opens with a really catchy riff, but I think it's Amanda Tanning's sort of rolling bass line that really pulls the song together. And again, there's just another fantastic chorus there. And the end of the song where they just repeat everything is normal over and over again to the point where they're almost kind of cracking up towards the end of it. It's just, there's a lot of joy in these songs, I think, even though the delivery of the vocals is sometimes quite, like you say, morose. But there is a lot of joy, I think, especially in the music. But I mean, I could talk. There's loads of songs in here I like. I think there's a bit of a lull, maybe towards the middle. I think with original composition, and maybe I don't want to go to Calabasas, and maybe don't quite.
Oh, I like that song, man.
Yeah, I think it's. I think the more I listen to this, I'll probably change my mind. But I just felt like there's a wee bit of a lull there. But in general, I really like this. Like there's the song "Call Your Mum," which just comes storming out the gates, but the vocals kind of slow things down, but there's a really good like shrieking guitar solo in there, amongst this kind of like ba 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 like vocal. And there's a good bit which is keep your receipts, a canary in a gold mine, which is just really, really fun to sing along to. Crying back's brilliant. Like just that line, like I'm bringing crying back, is just, I don't know. There's just something about it. It's got like a sort of granddaddy kind of esque distorted guitar solo in there as well, which is quite cool. And there's just, for me, there's loads to love on here. I think the vocals will put some people off.
Yeah.
Well, he's not even singing, but I think that's part of what makes this good.
I mean, I wasn't completely bowled over when I first listened to the album.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to admit, I think a lot of that was to do with the vocals. Even though I am a fan of kind of Talking Heads and what have you. However, it certainly has grown on me. And just as you were mentioning crying back there, do you think that's maybe a sideways look at or a play on Justin Timberlake bringing sexy back? Because there was a few. I think there's a few references in this album. Like bear
Justin
with
Timberlake.
Well, maybe not. Just like so.
It's a Justin Timberlake concept album.
Well, I think it's just, I don't know. I hadn't actually thought about Justin Timberlake until you mentioned crying back, but there's a few things in there. So, for example, the vocal refrain on "There's No Connection" on the song of the same name, which is track number 8, reminded me of the Shins song "Phantom Limb" off their third album, "Wincing the Night Away." Just that lyric, I think it's in the exact same spot as it is in the Shins song. And also the lyrics "Boyfriend with a soul patch, I know it's serious" on "I Don't Want to Go to Calabasas" seems to be a play on the Smiths song "Girlfriend in a Coma."
Could be.
So the Smiths,
wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, so like the Smiths lyric is "Girlfriend in a Coma, I know it's serious."
I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Wouldn't be the first time. But I don't know. I think the vocals were actually kind of what hooked me in, and I'm often a bit weird about sort of indie vocals and and stuff like that. But actually, it was just because they were quite different, and just the kind of the play of the of those vocals against the intensity of the music was quite good. Yeah, I think it's quite cool. But a lot of the instrumentation on here is really good. Like, a lot of the guitar lines are really infectious. Like on Big Big Friend, there's a really sort of cheeky swagger of a guitar line that comes in the verse, and the sort of minute and a half mark, there's a really kind of rocking breakdown as well. And some of the like all the choruses are all not, most of the choruses are really good. There's almost like on Emotional Rent Control, there's even a sort of almost Beach Boys kind of esque chorus. And maybe I'm talking shit, but that kind of popped out to me. And I mentioned kind of the Eels before. There's a song called "Do You Work Here," which just sounds like it could be an Eels song.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a slight echo on the vocals on that track, and there's a sort of dirtier bass line, a sort of slightly grungier feel, and it just feels like it could be could just be an Eels track. And even the track before that, there's this like weird guitar solo that reminds me of the Eels as well. If you think of the song like "My Beloved Monster and Me," it's that really weird, distorted like guitar solo. There's something similar there, and the album starts off really strong. I think it maybe dips towards the middle, but then it ends really strongly as well with "Don't Get Hit by a Car," which is just it's just got a really joyous guitar riff, a really groovy bass line, and it's just kind of a combination of all the things on the album that that make the album good. And the chorus that goes "Everything is boring now" is really good as well. So I like this a lot.
Where have you rated it, or how have you rated it?
I've given it a 9.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I really like it.
I've given it a 7 as well. Maybe if, like I said, it didn't bowl me over to begin with, but it's an album that certainly has grown on me. So maybe the more I listen to it, the more I'll appreciate it. I don't know, but praise indeed for a 9, man. That's
I don't know. It's just something about this really just vibes with me and gets under my skin. I guess it's just because it's really unusual.
yeah.
I think that's what jumped out to me. I've not really heard much like this, really. So cool. So that is "Emphatically No" by Cheekface.
I'm pulling weeds, the weeds are just some art I made. Listen to your heart, keep on keeping on, just say no to drugs. Keep the receipts if you want to return life's gift to the mall. A canary in a gold mine. I'm bringing crying back. Crying's the new black. Crying on my snacks. Let's do the mortal coil shuffle, the cumulative average of wasted time, anxiety plus caffeine. I'm sorry for what I did with your heartfelt letter.
Okay, next one then is from Arlo Parks. It's called "Collapsed in Sunbeams." So this is the debut album from London-based poet and singer-songwriter Arlo Parks, whose real name I will try not to butcher. Anais Oluwatoyin Estelle Marinho.
Yeah, man, that's pretty good going.
And so this album has actually been subject to quite a lot of critical acclaim since it came out. It peaked at number 3 in the UK albums chart. It came out at the end of January, 29th of January, on Transgressive Records. They were both introduced to Arlo Parks from our collaboration on with Easy Life on their track Sangria. And I think her vocals on that track were a real highlight. When you kind of first press play on this album, it opens with title track "Collapsed in Sunbeams," which is like a dreamy spoken word poem, and it sounds almost like it wouldn't sound out of place on LYR's "Calling the Crash Team." It's got that kind of delivery of because she delivers the vocals like a poem, like she just reads it like a beat poem. With sort of a really nice instrumental over the top. But when that isn't really typical of the album, I suppose the instrumentation is, but that sort of vocal delivery isn't. On the next track, like this sort of sleepy kind of jazzy instrumentation continues, and Arlo's style of singing comes to life, although it's still quite softly delivered and generally more spoken than sung, but and there are sort of flashes of spoken word here and there, but I suppose it's a little bit like if you imagine like Lily Allen's delivery, like
I'll give you that, man.
it's that kind of more spoken than sung sort of way of singing, but with maybe a softer delivery. You know, like someone like the likes of Norah Jones or something like that. That kind of more restrained kind of sound. But that first track, the first proper track, Hurt, has got this soft kind of jazz bass and drums combined with like a subtle woodwind sound, and it's got Arlo's silky vocals gliding over the top, and the bass line in particular on that's really catchy, and it's got a really good chorus section where she sings, "I know you can't let go of anything at the moment, just know it won't hurt so much forever," and it's a really strong opener to the album. What's your thoughts in general?
I loved it, man. I really enjoyed it. I was I was quite excited when you kind of recommended we check this out, because as you said, we were both introduced to Arlo Parks off the back of the Junk Food EP by Easy Life, and I absolutely fell in love with her vocals on Sangria. I thought it was fantastic. You mentioned Collapse in Sunbeams, as you quite rightly said. The piece or the album kind of opens up with a spoken word piece, which is right up my street at the moment. But the whole album is a real joy to listen to. I've kind of described it as being so effortlessly cool, whilst at the same time being quite emotive and engaging. It touches on various different themes, ranging from one's self-identity, sexuality, poor mental health, to failed and or failing relationships in the likes of Caroline or Bluish, for example, which I suppose, given my description of it, maybe kind of sounds as if it's quite melancholic and morose. However, it's not. That's not the case at all. I would say that the kind of Parks songs, or the contents of the song, kind of traverse the entire gamut of human emotion. There's quite a lot of positivity and optimism in this album, like you said, on kind of Hurt. That repeated lyric, it won't hurt forever. It won't hurt this much forever. It's, as I said, it's definitely not an oppressive listen. I've read online that some writers have described Parks' lyrics as being deceptively straightforward, and I think they are. I don't think you don't have to decipher them too much, but I think that's part of the beauty of this album, what makes it really good. As you said, the kind of musical arrangement or composition, Parks's vocals are soft and gentle, and for the most part they are set to these kind of shuffling, floaty and dreamy sounding soundscapes. There are occasions where you get the odd upbeat rhythm or flourish. I thought some of the songs had a real 90s vibe to them.
Yeah, I think that's where I kind of mentioned Lily Allen. I don't know when she arrived. It was maybe not the 90s, but at one point I was thinking like it reminded me of Nelly Furtado for some reason, and it doesn't sound like Nelly Furtado at all.
I'm
It's
like a
just-
bird.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a bird. I just got, I don't know. I guess it was just, I think like you say, some of it sounds quite 90s, and it took me back to that, and I was like, is that even the 90s though?
No, it would be, man.
That'd be the 90s.
Nelly Furtado would be the 90s.
Anyway, let's forget about Nelly Furtado.
Forget about Furtado.
So it's really quite in terms of like the instrumentation, it's really quite breezy and summery. And I think like I said with Easy Life, which also came out right at the start of the year, it's an album that's going to really like take off when the sun's out. I think.
Yeah, I think, what did I say about the Easy Life EP? It would be the perfect accompaniment to sitting in a trendy London beer garden or something like that. You could just say the same for this, I suppose.
I think you could. I think, and I think there's a lot of depth to the lyrics as well, like you said. And I think it's a fair point that they're fairly straightforward. But that is what
Makes it
helps make it good, yeah. And I think my favourite track on here is Caroline.
Oh, fantastic, man.
Which is
Yeah.
just a real showcase for her sort of narrative style and evocative lyrics, and it's just a song about a fight that she witnessed between an artsy couple at a bus stop, and it's just the way she describes the argument, and it's like sets the scene perfectly. Like there's a line that's it says strawberry cheeks flushed with defeated rage, then he spilled his coffee as he frantically explained, and it just builds to this sort of crescendo chorus that says, Caroline, I swear to God I tried. And there's just, I love the drums and the sort of little guitar flourishes that pop up every now and again. And it just all comes together. There's like a perfect tone and ebb and flow to the story. And it all just feels really effortless.
Yeah, that was a standout track for me as well, man.
But I mean, these tracks, they're all good. Caroline's definitely standout. For Violet stood out to me because the rest of the album's really breezy. And then For Violet sort of changes where it becomes a bit more moody and a bit more brooding. It's not nearly as bright. And I think it's just that it covers a sort of darker subject matter. And I mean, I'm not 100% certain what it's about, but it seems to be about like an abusive father. And you know, the instrumentation kind of mimics that darker tone to the story. And I think similarly on Eugene again has a sort of moodier sound to it as well, and again that's about a kind of a breakup and a kind of a breakup of a friendship over a relationship kind of thing. So but yeah, there's a lot of depth here, I think.
Definitely, man. I really enjoyed it, and I mean to think she's only like 20.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, so it'll be amazing to see what she comes out with next.
So, what did you rate this in?
I give it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I've gone with an 8. I think there's I really like the overall vibe of the album. I like the stories and the lyricism and a lot of the vocal delivery and the instrumentation. But I think there's a few weaker tracks even there that don't grab me quite as much. Like I'm not that into the last two tracks, Bluish and Porta 400, but it's a really good album. So that was Collapsed in Sunbeams by Arlo Parks.
I know you can't let go of anything at the moment. I think you know it, too cool to show it. You're not alone, like you think you are. You're not alone. Maybe if you took a breath, you would hear me when I talk to you. Let's go to the corner store and buy some fruit. It feels like nothing's changing and I can't do this, can't do this.
What are we on to next?
We are on to Look Alive by Black Pistol Fire or Black Pistol Fires.
Black Pistol Fire, isn't it?
Black Pistol Fire. So Look Alive by Black Pistol Fire was released on the 29th of January earlier on this year on Black Hill Records. It has 11 songs and is approximately 40 minutes and 9 seconds long. Spans 6th album to date. They describe themselves on their social media pages as a high-octane rock duo based out of Austin, Texas, by way of Toronto, Canada. The band consists of Kevin McCowan on guitar and lead guitar and Eric Owens on drums. So they met at North Toronto Elementary School and started playing music with one another in high school. Their sound is described online as a mix of classical southern rock and garage punk. And although there's elements of that on this album, I think it would be unfair to pigeonhole them. I think they draw on a whole host of different musical styles and influences on this album. And I have to admit, I was really quite impressed with it, especially when I discovered that they were a two-piece. So I listened to the album first before I actually kind of did any research. So with that in mind, I would say that there is definite similarities between them and the Black Keys. I think that's undeniable. There were times I was listening to this album, was reminded of the likes of the Black Keys album El Camino. However, that wasn't my initial reaction when I listened to them. The first track, the album's namesake, Look Alive, initially reminded me of something that the Arctic Monkeys might have done, or certainly have tried to do, especially with some of their most recent tracks on albums like AM or the Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. Opens with a fairly simple musical composition arrangement. There's these kind of gravelly vocals, there's a repetitive keyboard riff, there's a simple but effective drum beat. However, the song really starts to vibe and ramp up a gear around the 40-second mark, where you're treated to this really infectious kind of shuffling chorus that you can't help but nod along to. I don't know if you would agree to this, but the second track, Pick Your Poison, so the initial maybe 15 seconds, if that, initially reminded me of the Vapor song Turning Japanese. No?
Possibly. I never thought about it. I've said it's got a sort of fun island-esque guitar lick that it opens with.
Yeah. I've written here that, initially reminded me of the Vapor song Turned Japanese, or perhaps more appropriately, the opening bars of something like the Pigeon Detectives, Take Her Back, or even the likes of the Rifles, that type of guitar band from the early kind of 2000s. But as I said, that similarity is fairly short-lived. It's only about 15 seconds long or something. Then it morphs into something more akin to the likes of Wolfmother, or something they might have done. The vocal delivery, especially during the verse, feels really pointed, almost onomatopoeic, and I thought it kind of worked really well. And that was another really enjoyable headbanger. What was your other thoughts on some of these tracks, man?
I really don't like this album at all.
Oh man,
I really don't like this album. When I first listened to it, I kind of skipped through a wee bit and sort of thought, oh, that sounds quite cool. So I was, keen to cover it. But actually, having listened to it, I really struggle to get all the way through it. I just kind of get bored. I get kind of fed up after a few tracks, and I feel like it doesn't really do much different across the album, and it doesn't do anything that, I don't know, I just find it boring. And it feels a bit like Maroon 5 or Imagine Dragons, but with guitars, like more guitars.
It's funny because I haven't written Maroon 5. Although there were times where I was reminded of Maroon 5, especially on the 5th track, Wildfire.
Yeah.
Where the singer kind of raps his lyrics. And I would say the kind of song takes on more of a kind of poppy feel. I've likened it to. I have likened it to Imagine Dragons or One Republic. Do you know One Republic?
I think I do. The name rings a bell, but I couldn't tell you.
Well, I only know the one song, and I'm not prepared to sing it to you. But as soon as you heard it, as soon as if you were to hear it, you'd be like, yeah, I know exactly who they are. But yeah, I can get that similarity, man. I can get
Wildfire is the one that is, I've basically said it's a generic Maroon 5 song. And it sounds, the vocals sound exactly like Adam Levine. And don't get me wrong, I don't hate Maroon 5. Like, I mean, I'm not a Maroon 5 fan by any stretch of the imagination, but like some of their early stuff is all right. I mean, the Harder to Breathe off their first album is pretty good. Like,
I don't know. I honestly don't know that much of Maroon 5 stuff.
You know, Payphone. You remember Payphone? Don't know. I'm not going to sing that to you either.
And Moves Like Jagger is a Maroon 5 song, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. The less said about that, the better. But I don't know, that's just like, that's kind of the vibe I got from it, like the whole way through. Like
the whole album or just that song?
Kind of the whole album. Like, I'm not saying that all the songs sound like Maroon 5, but I just get that kind of...
How often can we say Maroon 5?
I know, like, we should put a little ticker up in the corner, like that
Adam Levine's head.
Like, you say Maroon 5 so many times and the gates of hell open up and swallow us whole.
Well, Adam Levine's about to burst through that door behind you.
Tear my head off and drink the blood spurting out of the stump of my neck. Going on a little bit off the topic there, but
yeah.
So I kind of, I've also written like the like of you know the song "Human" by Rag and Bone Man. Like it's like a rockier version of that, or like Hosier's "Take Me to the Church," like a rockier kind of version of that.
Yeah.
And they're sort of southern tinged kind of songs, but they're really, really sort of radio ready. I mean, "Take Me to the Church," not quite so much, but they're quite radio ready. And
yeah,
and like "Pick Your Poison" in particular, like once you get away from that initial island kind of sounding guitar at the start, there's this sort of ooh kind of vocal. I don't know. I don't want to sing it, but it just sounds like something you'd hear on like Soccer Saturday, like a football advert or like a car advert, and it's just not for me. I think.
What did you think of the opening track? I saw you nodding when I was kind of giving the description there.
Yeah, I don't mind the opening track. I think that's why
you stuck with it.
Well, I stuck with it because I thought the opening track's not bad, but then it just doesn't really do much else, and it just feels bland and it's not particularly original. And I mean, I'm not saying that music has to be original, but it has to have something that excites me, and the vocals don't do it, the guitars don't do it, like nothing really does it. And like I said, by the time I get to sort of halfway through, I'm done with it. I wish I had some good things to say about it, but I mean there are bits here and there that I do like there are little guitar licks, like the opening of Temper Temper. I quite like the guitar lick and the guitar tone there. It's quite cool. It's got a cool groove to it, but it's then the vocals and then like sort of finger click percussion like that. I don't like that. Actively don't like it, and it just ruins it for me. So there are some ideas and sounds there on these songs that I can get on board with. Like there's fuzzed up guitars and quite a good melody in the sort of first part of the chorus on "Always on My Mind." But
it's just not enough.
The whole song, like there aren't really any songs on here that I like particularly. The opening track's probably the best one.
See, I really like Black Halo.
It's like I said, it's okay. I mean, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
all I can say for it, really.
I thought you might quite like it because for my money, well, I'll tell you how I've described it. I've kind of described this kind of gloomy sounding, almost kind of psychobilly, or opens with this kind of gloomy sounding, almost psychobilly guitar riff that I instantly fell in love with, and I felt as if it sounded as if it came straight from like an old school kind of B movie. Not unlike some of the things we might have heard on Sex, Love and Infinite Void, or Sex, Death and Infinite Void, the Creeper album. Nah.
Possibly there are bits of it, yeah, but I think I think if there are, then Creeper do it far better. I think is there.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything on here that someone else probably doesn't do better, if you know what I mean.
Okay, I will give you that. Yeah, I will give you that. I mean, I've likened them to at least 3 or 4 different bands in my description. Yeah. I mean, I did quite enjoy the album. I did quite enjoy it. I did kind of feel as if it drew on enough kind of different musical styles and influences to keep you engaged and interested. However, out of all the albums that we have discussed and reviewed, it's the one album that I've went back to less often.
Yeah.
I'm only kind of realising that now, to be honest. Listen to Arlo Parks a lot. Listen to John Michie a lot. But definitely this one less often. I suppose I would kind of agree with you that it probably is. It is very radio friendly, I suppose. It's kind of unoffensive.
Yeah.
Bluesy rock.
I think if I heard this on the radio, I wouldn't like immediately turn it off potentially, but I wouldn't. I don't know if I want a whole album of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Don't necessarily, maybe a song here or there in a playlist or something, but I don't really want to listen to an entire album of it because I just get bored.
Fair enough. I'm dreading you tell me how you rated it.
Well,
have you rated it?
I have rated it. Yeah, I've not given it like no. It's not a no scorer. Like,
it's a -10.
And it's not, it's not complete dog shit. It's not like a 1. Like but I've given it a 4. Because a 4 on our rating system is just meh, and that's kind of how I feel about it. And I'm probably never going to go back to this, to be completely honest, because there's nothing really for me. I can find other stuff like this elsewhere probably that I'll enjoy more.
I rated it quite well. I mean, I gave it a kind of 7.
But different
yeah,
tastes,
I mean, obviously you said before, kind of music's subjective, and horses for courses and all the rest of it. But yeah, I'm not familiar with their back catalogue.
Aye.
So I don't know how it compares with their previous material. Aye.
So yeah, like their back catalogue could be really good, like or this, or maybe a step up, or it could just be the same. I haven't taken the time to find out, but certainly on the basis of this album, I don't really want to check it out more extensively. And I don't. Whenever I listen to an album, I don't want to dislike it. Like I'm not I just found it didn't engage me. And then when I've tried to kind of write notes about it, I just found that I was struggling for positives, to be honest.
It's quite a harsh critique.
I know, but I don't want to be like, I want to be honest about how I feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
About these albums that we talk about, and that's just the way I feel about it. And you know, someone else listening to this, like, I mean, you've given it a 7, which is a good score.
It is, yeah, definitely.
You obviously like it, and there'll be plenty of people out there that really like this, really vibe with it. But I just can't. It just doesn't do anything for me at all. So
on that note.
So on that note, that is the divisive album "Look Alive" by Black Pistol Fire.
What if I were to say goodbye? Sure, you gotta make your mind up on your own. Only my mind, I think you got that too. Too far gone, give me one more bottle roll. Cheap shots, low blows. What do you take me for? Too much, girl, just to ask you.
Yep.
Right. Okay, let's move on to our final album.
Last one.
And this is called High Vibrations. It comes from the John Michie Collective.
Are you pronouncing it Mickey?
I think it's Mickey. Mickey?
Well, see, I had a boss, like, when I was younger. You probably remember it, actually. Remember I used to work in the... I don't know if it was before.
That old man's pub.
No. This was when I used to work. So it was whilst I was at school. I used to work in the Sunday markets through in Thainston.
Right, I don't remember that.
I don't know if I kind of really knew you back then, man.
No, probably not.
But my boss was called Hugh Michie.
Aye, so
He's Scottish. This guy's from North England, isn't he?
Aye, so when I worked in Aberdeen, there was a guy who worked at the roads department, and he was called John Michie. So I've just said his name the same as I would say that name, and he was just like an old Scottish guy who worked for the roads department. Obviously not the same guy. I'd be
well, who knows?
Amazed if it was. So I don't know the pronunciation, but I've gone with Mickey.
And that's probably how most folk would pronounce it. It's probably just a Keith thing, Mickey.
Yeah, and I mean that's probably the least interesting thing about it.
Yeah, that is. Sorry. It definitely is the least interesting thing about this album and him.
Absolutely. So the John Michie Collective is a project by multi-instrumentalist and multimedia artist John Michie, who's based in the north of England. Right, calm down. Right.
Okay.
So
it's Bibby all over again.
It is Bibby all over. Still cracks me up. So this is a debut. I can't even talk. Right. This is a debut album from the JMC and is described on his website as taking inspiration from the Sykes stalwarts, including Pink Floyd, the Beatles, and the Velvet Underground. It's very much a psychedelic prog odyssey that combines elements of rock and roll, electronica, blues, world music, and more. So I was bemoaning how bland Black Pistol Fire album was there, but this album feels like a bit of a palate cleanser for me, because it's anything but bland. There's so much going on over the 14 tracks that make up this album. What's your general thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I was really quite impressed with this album. His name had been buzzing about for quite some time, because I think had he not previously submitted some of his material to the site, possibly ahead of the album release?
Yes, he sent. So after we reviewed Sophia by Valdo,
Right.
I think so. Nunny Boy, David Nunny Boy, is quite active on Twitter, and he tagged us. So John Michie had put feelers out for people to promote the album to, and I think Nunny Boy tagged us in it. So he'd emailed us with, I think, the first single, which I'm not certain what that was, to be honest.
Released quite a few singles.
It might have been Wish You Were Dead, but I can't remember. So he sent us that, and then there was a bit of back and forth, and he did send us the album in advance, but we just never got to it before it came out. So that's kind of so we did get it, and it could have been a sort of submission corner, but it feels more appropriate to be where it is, basically.
Absolutely.
But it's a very impressive piece of work.
It's I've got a lot of love for this album, man. I mean, I really didn't know what to expect. Obviously, as with kind of most of the albums that we cover, I listened to the album before I did any research, and as I said, John Michie's name had been kind of buzzing about for a little while, and I remember seeing on Facebook that he'd included Fantastic's first single, Ain't No Man With Money, on a playlist that he'd put together. So that inadvertently led me to believe that he was some sort of kind of southern gothic blues country artist. And although there are elements of that in this album, this piece is so much more, as you've kind of said. I've described it as a veritable smorgasbord of a multitude of different musical styles and influences. It's a heavily instrumental and textured piece that uses a wide variety of instrumentation, ranging from kind of swooning and soaring guitars, harmonicas, to synths, and I think even sitars. It's kind of interspersed with voice clips from what sound like old westerns and B-movies that are, for the most part, primarily used as a means of introducing the tracks, and on the occasions where John does sing, the vocals are often in the foreground and sound quite distant, and they're interlaid with various different effects and echoes, and for my money it sounded quite similar to the type of thing that the Beta Band might have done back in the day.
Okay.
There was also numerous times where I was reminded of other bands or artists. For example, like the opening bars of the third track, Wish You Were Dead, as you said, may or may not have been released as a single previously. I know that he released quite a lot of singles before they released the album, but that song in particular reminded me of Iggy Pop's Nightclubbing.
All right, okay.
I felt as if it opened with this kind of similar sort of kind of drum beat, a discordant piano, and this really kind of shuffling, sleazy, sludgy feel to it. However, it takes a delightful left turn towards the last 10 seconds or so of the track, where it takes on this new, albeit brief, life as a kind of dancey techno number, which I just thought was really cool. And there's bits like that throughout the course of the album where it just kind of shoots off in a totally different musical direction.
Yeah, totally. I really like Wish You Were Dead, that tinkling piano. Like, it sounds like something out of it sounds like it's almost been played on a broken piano in an old saloon or something.
Yeah.
And it's just, and then it's got these squealing guitars, which are, I suppose, where the sort of psych element comes from. There are these guitars soloing over a lot of these tracks. And it brings that sort of psychedelic element, and it's weird because it's described as sort of taking elements of like Pink Floyd and the Beatles and stuff like that. But the first track, you would never really guess that, because the first track's almost like a Prodigy song. It's
The
like
Mothership.
The Mothership, yeah. It reminds
It's
me of the song
I feel like-
Spitfire by the Prodigy.
Yeah, man.
It's not quite as bombastic or explosive, but it's got a very similar like groove to it, I suppose. And it's just a really, I mean, that's a really cool opening track. And then the next track is like a sort of acoustic song with like woozy electric guitar like all over the top of it, and it's got these bizarre like dreamy vocals that sound like, it almost sounds like Liam Gallagher or like Ian Brown. There's a sort of like Manchester vibe to the way the vocals sound a wee bit. And that's not to say this sounds anything like Oasis, because it sounds nothing like Oasis or the Stone Roses. But although I suppose there probably are some similarities with the Stone Roses here and there. But it's just, I think it's cool how it is really varied, and it's really varied within all the tracks, but it does sound, it all sounds like it's in, you know, part of the same album. Like it doesn't sound, nothing sounds out of place, really, is what I'm trying to say, I suppose.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed it. As I said, you know, there are you know, numerous kind of similarities to other kind of bands and artists. You know, you might agree or disagree with this, but there was times where I was reminded of the type of thing that Frank Black has kind of done in the past as well. Particularly on the likes of the Cult of Ray or Teenager of the Year album, on tracks like I'll Write Your Consolation, which is kind of towards the end of the album. It's probably, you know, one of the kind of standout tracks for me. It sounded very similar to the Adventure and the Resolution, which is in the Cult of Ray album. It's got a very similar kind of spacey feel to it. It has these kind of noodling guitars, kind of ebb and flow in and out of the track, and this really striking violin that accompanies the guitars, which I thought worked really, really well. Really well. One of my favourite tracks in the album, however, has to be Escape from San Francisco. That is fucking epic, man.
That's brilliant, isn't it?
It's so good. It's got this kind of real, I've described it as having a real kind of bluegrass feel to it initially, and described it how it effectively repeats this riff, which gets increasingly more textured and elaborate as time goes on. It first uses a guitar, then possibly a cello or double bass, and then the highlight of that track for me certainly is when he starts riffing using this kind of crazy jazz synth, I think, synth or keyboard. And
an organ or something like that, isn't it?
Aye, it's probably an organ. I just thought it was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I wish it could have gone on for longer, because it's a fairly short track.
It's mental, because the song is only 2 minutes long. I've said here it goes from Seasick Steve to The Doors, and it's only 2 minutes long.
Yeah, man, it's got a proper kind of Ray Manzarek kind of feel to it, doesn't it? I've described it there as having this real 70s psychedelic rock feel to it, but absolutely, yeah.
Aye, that's like that Escape from San Francisco and I'll Write Your Constellation that you mentioned already. Like, yeah, they're highlights. I quite like the Ballad of John Wayne as well. It's I find it funny that the song's called The Ballad of John Wayne, and then the only vocals are "Bang Bang You're Dead. It's a long, long way home." I don't know why, that just amuses me that all there is to say about John Wayne is that. But and then it's got that this kind of funny sample at the end, like you say, from like an old western or something, with this guy just screaming, "I killed that fat barkeep."
Yeah, that's fucking ace.
And actually there's a short bluegrass section at the end of that as well, which is like I don't know, it's like 7 seconds long. It's really short. And I was like, oh, and then you kind of get that comes back on. It comes back with a vengeance on the start of Escape from San Francisco.
Yeah, it's a fantastic album. Like I said, I know you've mentioned kind of Mothership. You've mentioned Mothership before, how it's the kind of opening track, and I would completely agree. And I actually never thought of it as sounding similar to Prodigy Spitfire, but you're absolutely right. I've described it having this kind of really apocalyptic cinematic feel to it. Like, it sounds as if it's jumped straight from a movie.
Yeah.
And just a banger of an opening track. What other songs have you enjoyed, man?
I mean, they're all really, really interesting. I quite like Under the Stars, which starts with like well, it starts with Neil Armstrong's famous quote from the moon landings,
Yeah,
and then it's suitably kind of astral, I suppose, as the name would suggest. But then it kind of over time morphs into this like, it's almost like a floor filling dance like song in a way. I was struggling for how to describe it, but it feels really, really dancey. In a sort of odd kind of way. But yeah, so that one for me was really interesting. And I think in terms of the sort of psychedelic side of things, Penny Was Her Name has got a lot of there's a lot of Pink Floyd on that track.
yeah.
Definitely very Dark Side of the Moon, in my opinion anyway. And the closing track, Astral Projection, feels a little bit like, it's almost like a cool down, like from the album. It sort of feels like it's sort of kind of just letting off steam until it just ends, and then there's the sample. You have a lot of talent, thank you, sir. Well, it's a guy saying you have a lot of talent, and the other guy saying thank you, sir, and it almost feels like a little pat on the back to himself on John Michie's part. And I'm not gonna jump that little bit of self congratulation, because because the album really is something else, and it's really impressive just in terms of all the different elements to this, like all the different instruments that are going on, and yeah, it's a really cool album.
So, it's just him, isn't it? I say it's just him, but was it all played and recorded by him?
I'm not certain.
Not sure.
I haven't read too much into that, but the John Michie Collective, it is just him.
John
but
Michie.
whether he's had any, session musicians in to help with pulling this together, I don't know. But I suppose the fact that he's described as a multi-instrumentalist probably tells a story, and it probably was all him, or the majority of it was him. I also like that his record label's called Shabby Road Records. I think that's really funny.
Yeah, I was trying to find a bit more about Shabby Road's records, and apparently there was a Shabby Road Records in Ayrshire at one point.
Right, okay.
And there's also a podcast by the same name, so I think they do a similar thing to ourselves, actually. Just review new music and what have you. Or review old music, actually, I think.
All right, okay.
But there's no connection there.
Cool. What have you rated this in?
I've given it an 8 or a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I've given it a 9 as well. I think it's pretty good. Well, it's more than pretty good. It's very good.
It's very good. There's a lot of stuff to like, man. There's a lot of stuff to sink your teeth into, I think.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so that was High Vibrations by the John Michie Collective.
Known for a long time use pretending. Don't stop. Bang, bang. Everything that's been has passed to the page.
All right. Well, that was the last album. I'll just do my spiel. That's it for another episode of the Scratchcast. We'd love to know your thoughts on what we've covered. And if you do like any of the bands or artists, then make sure you send some love their way. If you want to support the show, then don't forget to subscribe to the Scratchcast on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember to leave us a nice review. If you really want to be a hero, you can buy myself or Grant a coffee on buymeacoffee.com, where you can also let us know how you think we're doing, what we can improve, or what you think we should cover in the future. The link is in the show notes. If you'd like to be featured on Submission Corner, then please send your submissions for consideration to theheadscratcher@outlook.com, or message us directly on Facebook and Instagram at theheadscratcher, or on Twitter at scratcherhead. If you can't wait for the next episode, then head over to theheadscratcher.com to find all our pop culture reviews, recommendations, alternative music playlists, interviews, and of course all the previous episodes of the podcast. February's playlist is out now, and March's probably will be too by the time this goes out, to be honest. Some of my choice cuts from February's playlist are My Immolation by Portrayal of Guilt, Now I'm In It by Haim, Medicine by Nick Waterhouse, and of course Hangman by Vantastic. Finally, make sure you check us out on YouTube, where you can find all the individual reviews from previous podcasts, and please remember to like, follow, and subscribe for updates. If you made it this far, then there's only one thing left to say, and that's thanks for listening, and as always, please tell your friends, your colleagues, your parents, and your pets. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.
Cheerio.
We don't finish.